The world champion gets knocked out in an impressive 4 seconds. His perfect and dominant MMA score goes down the drain, and his opponent is shot to the stars of the promotion. That's what happens when the limits of trash talk are crossed. Today, we will cover the short but fiery clash between funky Ben Askren and Jorge Gambred Masvidal. It was brutal, tense, and ended with aggression, and the build-up of this clash was epic. So stay until the end of the video to see what actually happened, how and why Ben got knocked out, and what he did to wake up the beast in a dangerous street fighter. Ben Askren rode into the UFC in 2019 on a high horse. His dominance lasted for a decade on the battlefields of Bellator and won championship promotions. With 10 title fights under his belt, as a supreme wrestler, he was on a 19-fight winning streak, defending titles at the rate John Jones was being taken into custody. Don't let Dana White hear us. To say Dana White was not his fan would be an understatement. The two have hated each other for years, but the president is ready to forgive anyone willing to fill his wallet and promote the UFC. In his debut, Ben defeated Robbie Lawler in the first round with a controversial Herb Dean stoppage after surviving a barrage of Robbie's punches. After a bad start, fans couldn't help but wonder if he could match the UFC's competition in the future. Fortunately, his future opponent was there to answer that question. Before their confrontation, which will reverberate for decades, Jorge Masvidal was a UFC fighter with 16 appearances in the promotion. Even before his MMA career, Gambred participated in illegal street fights before people knew what an octagon was. This gave birth to his skills and he became known as the supreme striker in future bouts. However, luck in the UFC did not serve him. Masvidal would string together a pair of wins only to lose his winning streak and be forced to start over. After several falls, people began to see him as a non-championship fighter and journeyman of the sport. After 2 consecutive defeats in 2017, Jorge returned in 2019, and during that break, he says he experienced enlightenment. He showed this when he came to the enemy ground in London, where the favourite was the local fighter Darren Till, who, to the astonishment of everyone watching, fell in the second round. It was his first knockout loss in a successful 17-1 career. In 2019, the UFC honoured us with the UFC 239 event and a superb striker versus wrestler matchup. In addition to his grappling expertise, Ben also mastered the art of trash talk, and Jorge, on the other hand, was not fond of name calling and just waited for the cage door to close. Still, he had to endure the verbal turmoil Funky put him through. With everything he said, Askren didn't know he was digging his own grave, which gave Masvidal extra motivation to run him over. Whenever the cameras rolled and the microphones were there, Ben was vocal in calling out Masvidal's fighting abilities and wannabe tough persona and vowed to dominate him. If you ask how Gambred felt, he says nothing was personal, but that he wanted to break Askren's face badly. Ben's confidence was over the roof as the fight got closer, and he couldn't even imagine how it would backfire. It fared much worse than the usual 3-piece with a soda meal. When it came time for Askren to show promised dominance, things went completely wrong. Fights between strikers and grapplers usually end in the first 2 rounds due to an express knockout, or the wrestler is the one who ragdolls his opponent until the final bell. However, this fight not only ended quickly, but John Anik didn't even get to read the sponsorships. In the first seconds, Jorge proved to be a more intelligent fighter who studied his opponent well, knowing that he would start hugging from the start. But the only thing Funky got to hug was amnesia due to Masvidal's flying knee that erased his consciousness and memory of the fight. A few seconds and it was over before it had begun. This was a legendary moment in the UFC as Jorge broke the record for the fastest knockout in history of the promotion. To say that everyone went nuts when the knee kissed Askren's head would be an understatement. However, the record wasn't the only thing that was broken that night. Jorge broke Ben's winning streak and sent the Funky train off the rails into the first chasm. Ben experienced his first defeat and the sharp decline in his career because he lost the next fight before retirement. And Jorge went on to win a BMF belt against Nate Diaz and became one of the biggest UFC stars during that period. Oh, how the tables turned.